We're about to dive into a story of, well, absolute transformation. I'm talking about how an entire civilization, an entire way of life, was completely rewritten from the ground up in just a few hundred years. Just imagine for a second. You wake up one day and everything that makes you you, your job, your freedom, your whole place in the world, it's just erased. That feeling that you can climb the ladder, that you can change your destiny? Poof, gone. And in its place, a brand new, super rigid system. Now, this isn't some sci-fi movie plot. This was the real deal for people living in ancient India. And the key to unlocking this whole mystery? It's hidden inside one single, but pretty epic, question. Okay, I know what you're thinking. That looks like a boring exam question, but trust me, don't look at it like that. Think of it as a map to a historical puzzle, a challenge to figure out one of the biggest shifts in human history. And today, oh yeah, we're gonna crack this thing wide open. So you can forget about those dry, dusty textbooks. I'm gonna give you the secret sauce, a simple 3-step formula to not just answer this question, but to really get the epic story behind it all. You ready? Let's jump into step 1. All right, first up on our list, society. And I'm not talking about small tweaks here. We're talking a complete top-to-bottom overhaul of how people lived, how they talked to each other, even how they saw their place in the cosmos. It was like going from a world of endless possibilities to a world with a very strict rulebook. So here's the core of it, the before and after picture. In the early Rig Vedic times, things were pretty fluid, pretty egalitarian. Think of a society where what you could do was what mattered. If you were a great poet or an amazing craftsman, you got respect. Didn't matter who your parents were. But then, as we slide into the later Vedic era, that all gets thrown out the window. The whole system locks down, becomes rigid, and this strict, top-down hierarchy is born. And what was the absolute cornerstone of this new, rigid world? It was something called the varna system. Now, this wasn't just a social ladder. It was seen as a cosmic blueprint, something set by the gods themselves. It basically sorted everyone into one of 4 buckets for life, right from the moment you were born. And you can see why it was so powerful, right? It was a way to organize this booming population, to give everyone a job and keep order as they were building this brand new world. So you had the Brahmins up top. They were the priests, the scholars. Right below them, the kshatriyas, the warriors, the rulers. Then came the vaishyas, the merchants and farmers. And at the bottom, the shudras, who did the labor for everyone else. And that was it. Your path was set in stone from birth. That freedom to move around, to climb the ladder like in the old days, yeah, that was disappearing and fast. Then everything changed for women. This was one of the most dramatic and frankly saddest shifts. Back in the Rig Vedic era, women actually held a pretty respected place in society. But in this new world order, their freedoms, they just started to evaporate. We have records of these absolutely brilliant female intellectuals, right? Women like Gargi and Maitreyi. These weren't just background characters. They were at the center of the biggest philosophical debates of the day. Total intellectual powerhouses. But they became the exception, not the rule. And that right there tells you everything you need to know about the change that was happening. They became these rare, shining lights in a system that was systematically shutting women out of education and public life. Their stories are this powerful, kind of heartbreaking reminder of what society was losing. And you could see this new rigidity popping up everywhere. You had the rise of the big, male-dominated joint family run by the grihapati, the head of the house. You had these super strict marriage rules based on your family line or gotra. Even the education system got more formal and structured. The whole of society was basically being put into neat little boxes. Okay, let's switch gears. We're on a part 2 of our formula, the economy. And look, if the social changes were all about locking things down into a structure, the economic changes were the exact opposite. We're talking about an explosion of growth, of wealth, of complexity, and it was all kicked off by one single game-changing discovery. And here it is, the game changer. It was called Krishna Ayas, the black metal. We just call it iron. Suddenly, having tools made of iron, strong plows, sharp axes, it completely changed the agricultural game in the super fertile Indo-Gangetic plains. For the first time, people could chop down dense forests and farmland on a scale they had never even dreamed of. And this, of course, set off a massive chain reaction. It's pretty simple, right? Iron tools lead to way more food, these huge agricultural surpluses. More food means you can support more people. And those little villages, they started to grow and grow until they became bustling towns and even early cities. It was a perfect domino effect that literally reshaped the entire map. So this farming boom created this whole new economy from scratch. All of a sudden, you've got massive farms growing new crops like rice and wheat. You've got cities like Hastinapur popping up. You've got a brand new class of people, the Vaniks, who are professional traders. And you see all these specialized jobs emerging: potters, carpenters, metalworkers. Society wasn't just simple anymore. It was getting complex and fast. And naturally, with all this new trade happening, just swapping goods wasn't going to cut it anymore. You need something more efficient. So what do we see? The very first forms of currency, things like the Nishka and the Krishna. They were basically just standardized pieces of metal, like gold and copper, that everyone agreed had value. Made doing business a whole lot easier. But here's a really deep one. The entire idea of ownership changed. Back in the tribal days, land was kind of communally owned, right? It belonged to the whole group. But now that people were settling down and farming specific plots of land, the idea of my land, of individual ownership, really took root. And you know what comes with private property? Taxes. The old bali, which used to be a voluntary gift, became a mandatory, systematic tax collected by the king. And one last thing on the economy, as all these new jobs popped up, the people doing them started to team up. They formed these organizations called shronis, which were basically early versions of guilds. You know, a group of carpenters or merchants would get together to control quality, set fair prices, and just look out for each other. It's another classic sign of an economy that's really growing up. All right, we've unpacked the social side, we've decoded the economic revolution. It's time for our final step, step 3, nailing the big picture. Let's put all these pieces together and see what it all really means. And here it is. If you remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. The Vedic world went from a simple, pretty equal nomadic society of sheep herders to a complex, settled farming civilization built on a super rigid hierarchical pyramid. That right there is the great Vedic transformation. Kind of makes you think, doesn't it? If a single metal, iron, could completely tear down and rebuild an entire world back then, what's the big innovation that's doing that to our world right now? Seriously, what is it? Is it AI? Is it the internet? Gene editing? What do you think is the Krishna Ayas, the black metal of the 21st century? I really want to know what you think, so drop your answer in the comments below. And hey, if this made you see things a little differently, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more mind-bending explainers every single week.